Note that we are now live, so we'll start here in a couple minutes.
If my phone was
Okay.
off, it's not my fault.
Schultz wasn't here.
Never shut it off.
What kind did you get, Trav?
Same as what I had before, 4 years ago.
Mention, I was like, we better at least make it.
Travis, a second.
Should make copies and give it to
Here, get it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I can do individually.
Ms. Engel, if you do roll call, please.
Dan Schmidt.
Here.
Terry Engel here. Travis Ralph.
Here.
Joanne Maloney.
Here.
Rich Mueller.
Here.
Lauren Shanerock.
Here.
And Rick Schultz.
Here. We have an agenda in front of us this evening. Mr. Mayak, is there any correction or additions to that agenda?
Those extra hires were added. Okay, so it should be up to date.
Great. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schoenrock, seconded by Mr. Mueller to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comments this evening, Mr. Mayak. Are there any?
There is no one signed up at this time. Is that correct, sir?
Okay, thank you. That'll take us right into the superintendent's report.
All right,
Mr.
good evening,
Mayor.
everyone. Obviously, I'll have some information to share along in the agenda, but 4 or 5 different things I wanted to point out real quickly. Today, as many of you know, or all of you know, that year kind of got officially started with activities returning and practicing starting. So the kickoff to fall and the fall season is underway, which leads to more things underway and starting up here soon. Our new teacher orientation is next week. That will include a bus tour and a lunch. Mr. Jurgens and Mr. Bunn have put that together. It runs over 2 days, and we'll meet with different departments, different groups, and just go through some of the things that people that are new to the district or new to the profession need to know about. After that, the next week is our back to school workshop again. So 2 weeks from today, all of our staff will be returning. We have 4 days of professional development. Obviously, there's some time for the staff members, the teachers to get into their classroom, the staff members to get to their learning areas, if it's their case managers, whatever the case is. But we're 2 weeks away from the entire staff coming back and kind of easing into it one step along the way here. I want to just make a comment again that I continue to meet with the 4 different superintendent groups that I'm part of. And on a typical year, it's very common that superintendents or groups like this would just talk about the start of the year and what's being planned and what this is going to look like and what that will look like. And obviously that's very much the case now, but the focus is probably more on COVID. And we'll continue to have our meetings with the county public health and the superintendents as part of that group as well. And then the last thing on my report is just a quick update on the Ellendale Elementary building canopy. You have a photo in front of you. I personally have taken a look at that, and the pitch of the roof has jumped out at me. I've had a couple other conversations with people asking about that sort of thing. So where we are, I did finally get a hold of Dan or Colin and had the chance to talk to him on Friday, and they did have some hiccups, some more snags come in, and this was with the welding. And Colin responded today that the welders are scheduled for tomorrow, I believe it is, that they're coming in to take care of that and have the inspectors come back. There was an issue with some of the gutter clearance. And the way Colin explained it, it was small little formalities that they had to take care of. He did identify them as snags, whatever. So it's part of the process, but also slowing down the process. My big question to him, my first big question to him, Colin, the project manager, is, again, remember that we have students coming in on September 7th. And just to make sure that this is all done, this will be done and ready for the buses to pull up and the students to come out. And his wording was that it's absolutely their intent to finish before the first day of school. So the word intent obviously caught my attention, and I'll follow up and continue to talk with him. I was pleased to see that he sent an email today just kind of keeping me in the loop step by step. I think in his world, which is very accurate, there's still 3 weeks before school starts, and he thought 4 days, 5 days of work is needed to finish things up and have it ready. So a different perspective, an accurate perspective, and their intent is to make sure it's ready as they promise and ready for our students to come in. So then the second big question again I asked and had on my mind was, is this the way this frame is supposed to look with the pitch that's on there and whatnot? So he sent along some information, some communication that he had that dated back to August of 2020, so a year ago. There was conversations between himself and Dr. Carlson and Mr. Anderson on the design and the makeup and the look that they were finalizing, that there was a plan, and they made some adjustments to the two-pitched or like kind of the A-framed type of canopy, and they went with this single pitch. And so he shared the pictures of their draw up, and it is exactly the way it's supposed to look right now. And once the not window or glass, but the canopy top gets put into place, that's an idea of what the final project will look like.
People seem to want to share their opinions
I
here.
don't want to say that. I've already
No,
talked with them,
no.
so.
And again, I think there's probably some differences of opinions on, the look, but I visited with Mr. Mayak earlier today too, and there was a process that we went through to come up with this design. So hopefully it meets our expectations once the project is completed. And as you drive around other districts, there is a variety of options out there that seem to be sufficient. But this will provide an opportunity to keep students out of weather as they enter the school building. So hopefully our satisfaction is there as it completes. So thank you for keeping after them, though, to get the project headed toward completion. Be nice to have that ready to go for students on the 7th. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Looking at this top drawing, it seems like the downspout is where the gutter is open at the end. Is there anything that comes off of that?
That's attached to the building, or is it coming out to the ground?
It's attached to the canopy there on the end.
Like
Looks it's open.
The front?
I think currently it's open, it's just kind of have that spout coming off the roof, and he didn't go into great detail on what type of kind of modification or adjustments needed on that, but I made the assumption that to get some sort of clearance or some sort of connection from that gutter to the trough or to the canopy or clearing of that. So Rich, I apologize, I don't have the answer, but I can see if they have some more details on that.
So I'm just looking at it, it's open, and what's gonna happen, well, the water's gonna go down the ground, and when it's gonna get colder,
right.
we're just gonna have ice there.
Big
right in
frozen.
Yes.
Well, see, it's shown that it comes off from the end.
Is it supposed to flow back this way?
No, we don't want it going toward the building, but I had looked at that same situation and I thought perhaps you run that down the post and exit it out onto the lawn on one of those posts maybe, but however.
Wouldn't you assume it's gonna run down like that first leg?
Right, that's where I would hope that it would versus pouring off the end like Rich is concerned about, which is a legit concern for ice buildup and the likes, but.
I know these are all drawings.
Right, no, it's a valid point, Rich.
I think just thinking of what it looked like prior before they ripped out all the cement, there was the cement of the sidewalk, that had kind of that curved
Trough
gutter
to it.
thing and it would flow out. That was all removed. So I need to find out. It seemed like if that was removed, they would have a different system
it was
than the
like
old
this.
previous system. Yeah.
I'd have an answer.
Yeah, please.
I'm looking back at that email from last August, and it talks about, they're gonna slope the canopy to the south, with a gutter and a downspout to direct the water away from the sidewalk.
Perfect.
Okay.
That was
Thank you.
from last August.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Glad we have you here.
Any other questions before we move on to board member comments? All right, are there any board members that would like to make comments this evening? That the next regular scheduled meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 20th, 2021 at the Secondary School Media Center at 6:30 p.m. Moving into the consent agenda items, it's been brought to our attention that we would like to move the minutes out of the consent agenda. And with doing that, then I would ask Mr. Mayak to introduce the remaining consent agenda items, please.
Okay, and really the consent agenda, especially since there's no donations to report individually, the consent agenda would be asked to approve as it's stated and as it's written here. I do, with the exception, want to point out a couple different notes here. First off, on the employment, the workforce, the employment, a quick little update on the last two. You have a Madeline Phillips, who was hired as a long-term sub. That will be a primary. We have 3 maternity leaves in our elementary building. 2 of them are back-to-back, basically, and so Ms. Phillips will start the year in the fall in 1 second grade classroom, and except for a few days, she'll go from 1 long-term maternity fill to a second one, and that will take her through the spring. In the meantime, in some of those overlap days, we have a built-in substitute for our buildings across the district. So And then the second part of that, Miss Ricks was hired or will be introduced as the teaching and learning coordinator for you to approve. And just in a little bit of background information on that position, that you'll see that Miss Ricks or Mara came from the Faribault School District, that we did work together for a year. She was in the district for 8 years. She served 1 year in the middle school building as a literacy coach. She has a teaching and learning master's degree, and then that literacy position that she holds in that school district is has a lot of the same type of characteristics and traits that we're looking for in our teaching and learning coordinator's position. So wanted to make those few notes so you have a little bit of background on Mara Ricks and the teaching and learning coordinator. Third, I just wanted on the resignations, if you count those up real quick, you're looking at over 35 years, 38 years of service from our professionals that are have resigned. So with appreciation to accept the resignations as they submitted, and then the many years of service provided to our district. And then finally, my fourth note here in the consent agenda is in the statewide enrollment options. You'll see that there are 2 students in our district choosing online school. And just to note that we are working with South Central Service Co-op and having opportunities for those students, and any student that is contemplating online, that they can remain a student of ours in our school district. The education is provided through South Central Service Co-op, and then we pay fees or the education properties to them to provide the online school. But more importantly, that those students then would remain with us. They can still participate in some of our classes. They can participate in fine arts or athletic activities. They can be part of our after-school programs, or whatever the case is, rather than withdrawing from our school district, going to a completely new school district. This way, we can at least offer them to remain a NRHEG Panther. So with that, the consent agenda as presented.
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Routh to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will now act on the minutes from the 19th of July. We've noticed there to be some corrections there, so if we could state those corrections, Ms. Engel, please. You have that handy?
Well, the meeting was called to order by Dan Schmidt at 6:30 instead of Rick Schultz. And then when did the roll call, that's correct.
Okay.
What were the other ones you brought up?
I think I
Mr.
didn't mean to
Shonra?
put you on the spot there, but there was some place later in the
Yeah.
minutes that I think,
It was,
Voting
resolution for board to adapt. Joanne Maloney introduced the following resolution that moved its adoption, and she also seconded it.
Okay, let's see right here.
under what item was that, Lauren, please?
That's C under item 11.
Yep, back to 11. Items.
I know Joanne's very nutrition, but,
That's a bit much, isn't it?
and then Rick Schultz also voted in favor of that.
And so here's the, okay.
Oh, memory,
Yep.
okay. Who seconded?
Who made the motion then? Do you have that information, Lauren? Because it says it was seconded by Joanne.
The motion of adoption foregoing was duly seconded by member Joanne,
Okay.
but it was, this part was confusing. Moved by Mueller, seconded by Maloney, to approve the 10-year long-term facilities maintenance budget.
That was the item before
Okay.
it.
It's the bank one, the next one.
Okay,
Yeah, authorizing Mr. Minot
Okay,
as fiscal agent.
so we're.
I have that, Joanne and then Schoenrock.
Okay, so Joanne introduced it
Yes,
and Lauren Schoenrock seconded it.
yes.
Appreciate the corrections on that. That's, we want the,
Rick voted aye on that one.
right, and I'm absent.
That's magical.
I was probably thinking of you at that time, so I'm sure I was there for support. We're comfortable with having them corrected?
And then adjournment was moved by Lauren and seconded by Mueller to adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, are we comfortable that they are accurate? So could I have a motion to approve the amended minutes of the July 21st school board? 19th. I gotta get it right here.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Rao, seconded by Ms. Maloney to approve the amended minutes of the July 19th, 2021 school board meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we can move into recommended actions. Student achievement, the safe return to school plan for 21-22. Mr. Mayak, would you introduce that, please?
Yeah, this is another required document that is coming from the state. And as I've told, it's labeled a safe return to learning plan. I've said in the past that the plan that our district has had in place or put into place last school year was a very extensive, detailed report. And that sort of depth and that sort of document is not needed this year. And so that document was used as a framework, copy and paste the important parts of that and the important parts that the state was looking for. Together we put, or the safe return to learning plan was put together. There was a committee of sorts from last year that had some responsibilities as far as COVID decisions and COVID planning. We called that committee back together, and that was a representation of different personnel in the school and the community, and had most of the people in attendance on our first initial meeting on August 4th. The document was presented to them. We had some discussions on different parts and different factors, and kind of as the return to school gets considered, made some minor changes, and the team supported that the plan presented come forward to the school board for approval. Now, 5 key important parts that I would point out, and that is the safe return to school plan does recommend students and staff wear masks. It is not using the word requirement. There is no requirement at this point, just recommend. The masks are, though, however, recommended by the CDC on any transportation, which includes school buses, vans, any sort of school transportation. Contract tracing is an important part of the safe return to learning plan. That contact tracing will take place, and information will be provided to families when their child or when their children are in close to a positive case at school. The NRHEG school district is not providing distance learning options. And as you've heard over and over, distance learning versus online learning is a significant thing. That the distance learning is what we saw last year. The online learning has been going on. And again, I just explained that we're looking at some online options, and that if any family or any student is interested in those online options, they should contact their child's principal. Really this is very similar, again, to the plan, or it's copied and pasted from the plan that we used last year at the start of the year. It is very consistent with what neighboring school districts are using, and it has to go without, it has to be said every time that this is that living document that, based on the Department of Education, based on the Department of Health, the CDC, the plan that's in place could change, and continued conversations will take place moving forward as needed. So I present that to you to approve for the, as presented in the Safe Return to Learning Plan document.
Any questions on the plan or comments?
I guess I'm glad to see that the masks are not required. I think that was a challenge to the students, the staff, everybody last year, and so with it being recommended, it's basically an option. I'll move the adoption of the plan.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Schoenrock, seconded by Mr. Routh to approve the Safe Return to School plan as presented. Is there any further discussion? One thing I want to reiterate that Mr. Mayak shared with us is that this is a living document. I think some of the conversation in that committee meeting was valid in the point that we are very hopeful that the year will go as normal as possible. However, we all know that COVID is alive and well within our district, and if mandates come or if we feel uncomfortable about the safety of our students and staff, there may be a need to adjust these. So as I thought about this in preparation for tonight too, my thought is each one of us has a responsibility to do our part in trying to prevent the spread of COVID, however we may see that to fit our own decision making. But our objective is, as a district and as a board, administration, the entire team here, is to keep this as normal of a school year and move forward that way. So I hope this is a group effort to make this plan successful and to keep the doors open and students in the classrooms.
I have to say something. I really have concerns about those who are under 12 and don't even have the opportunity to be vaccinated. And we can rely on ventilation and social distancing of 3 feet, although the 3 feet, my recollection is it was changed from 6 feet to 3 feet, in part because of a recognition that our school buildings just aren't designed for a 6-foot distance, but also we were masking at that point. I'm uncomfortable. I really feel that when we recommend masking, the result will be few, if any, masks. So that's just where I'm at.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor to approve the Safe Return School plan for 21-22 as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Records show that it passed 6-1. Thank you for those comments. Resolution adoption of health and safety measures 21-22. Mr. Mayak, please.
Yeah, this is another required action for the board, and a roll call vote is needed on this one. The resolution format was shared by MSBA. They gave some suggestions as far as 2 different spots in the, or a couple different spots in the resolution that they select a sample language, and essentially this follows along with our Safe Return to Learning plan. And with the roll call, I'll have to read through the entire resolution before we vote. So, Mr. Chair, if that's,
Please.
read it now and then discussion afterwards.
That would be great, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is the health and safety measures for the 2021-2022 school year. whereas Minnesota statute section 123B.09 vests the care, management, and control of independent district in the school board, and whereas the superintendent of Independent School District 2168, Michael Myhock, is responsible for the management of the schools, the administration of all school district policies, and is directly accountable to the school board, and whereas when responsibilities are not specifically prescribed nor school district policy acceptable, the superintendent shall use personal and professional judgment subject to review by the school, or I'm going to back up a second, nor school district policy applicable. The superintendent shall use personal and professional judgment subject to review by the school board pursuant to school district policy 302, superintendent. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and the Minnesota Department of Health, the MDH, have determined that COVID-19 pandemic is currently ongoing and may remain ongoing for an unknown time. And whereas the Minnesota Department of Education, the MDE, has issued and may continue to issue written guidance for Minnesota schools on educational issues related to COVID-19. And whereas the MDH has issued and may continue to issue written guidance for Minnesota schools on public health issues related to COVID-19. And whereas the superintendent and the administration of the school district have conferred with the school board regarding COVID-19 health and safety measures, the current CDC, MDE, and NDH requirements for each, and other relevant information. And whereas based upon the collective consideration of these factors, the superintendent has recommended to the school board that all staff, students, and visitors within Independent School District 2168 buildings, regardless of vaccination status, must follow the strategies of physical distancing, 3 feet social distance whenever possible, hand washing and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and disinfection, contact tracing, screening, testing, and staying home when sick as defined in the CDC guidance for COVID-19 prevention and K-12 schools. For non-vaccinated staff, the guidance is weekly testing and will be paid for by the school district, be implemented at the commencement of the 2021-2022 school year. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 2168 as follows. Section 1 reads, the superintendent is hereby directed to implement the following health and safety measures to open the 2021/2022 school year. All staff, students, and visitors within Independent School District 2168 buildings are recommended to wear a mask regardless of vaccination status. All staff of Independent District 2168 should be vaccinated unless said person cannot be vaccinated because of a medical condition or a sincerely held religious belief. Section 2 states the superintendent is hereby authorized, after consultation with the school board chair and notification to the school board, to select and implement different health and safety measures for the school district or any specific school building without school board action if the superintendent reasonably believes that prompt implementation of different health and safety measures is necessary, and that constraints of time and public health considerations render it impractical to hold a school board meeting to approve the implementation. The health and safety measures selected and implemented by the superintendent shall continue in effect unless and until the school board, in consultation with the superintendent and appropriate school district staff and public health officials, deem it to be the best interest of the school district and the students to implement different health and safety measures. And finally, Section 3, the superintendent will provide regular updates to the school board regarding the school district's efforts to implement COVID-19 related educational and public health guidance issued by the MDE and MDH respectively.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussions on that resolution?
Mr. Myhock, could you repeat that?
Might have missed something in paragraph.
I was thinking, who's gonna be the smart ass? Just after the first whereas. Huh?
Right. If not, I will ask our clerk to do a roll call vote, please, on the approval of the document.
Dan Schmidt,
Aye.
Terry Engel, aye. Travis Ralph,
Aye.
Joanne Maloney,
Aye.
Rich Mueller,
Aye.
Lauren Shanerock,
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Resolution carries. Moving on to the student handbooks. We are happy to have both of our principals with us this evening, and we will start with the secondary handbook. Mr. Bunn, please.
All right, so I guess changes that we have made, we've made the decision to kind of go back to a more usable document. And so we had full board policies in the handbook before, which made it, 100 and some pages and really not a useful document. So we dialed it back again to what we did before. One of the things that we do include are some links, live links that will go to the current board policy. So as things come through and are changed or come down through MSBA, the parents and kids and everybody will always be able to have the most up-to-date information. And so if there's not something in the handbook that got changed and there's some confusion. So the other thing that we did kind of at the end, we do list the appendix for all of the board policies, and at the bottom we put a link in to all the board policies so people can get access to it. So otherwise it's pretty run of the mill in terms of procedures.
Do we hand hard copies out of that guidebook? No. Good.
Typically what we do is we'll, after tonight, so tomorrow I can have Terry send it out via JMC to families and kids. And then we'll work with Angie a little bit with the IT to see if we can have it on their desktop all the time, where it's just sitting in the background and they can access it as needed.
Thank you.
I missed those 96 pages. I could probably get to sleep a few nights.
Me too.
And I would assume we would be approving these individually, is that?
Yeah.
Right, so if there are no further questions on the secondary handbook, I would entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll move to approve the secondary handbook as revised.
Okay.
Motion made by Ms. Maloney, seconded by Mr. Schoenrock to approve the secondary handbook as revised. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the elementary handbook. Mr. Jurens, welcome and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Like Mr. Bunn, there's not a ton of changes in the elementary handbook. Particularly in my first year here, I don't want to make a lot of changes right away. I want to kind of see how things go and see how I can slide in and be a part of the team. However, there were a couple of things that I'll make note of. There was some very specific COVID language in the elementary handbook last year about things that were required. So I pulled that out based on, Mr. Minot touched those negatively stated phrases out. And I like to focus more on our family pride expectations. Be safe, be respectful, be responsible, be positive. Everything can kind of fall under that umbrella. So in order to make that student discipline section kind of positively stated, I pulled out some of those things. That also kind of will give me a lot of discretion on how to handle particular situations if we have these very specific lists of what we're not supposed to do. So I did pull those things out, and now the behavior expectations are more positively stated. And then Dean and I found the section on school snacks was a little bit specific to how certain grades might do a snack break. And we found out that that's actually communicated out by those teachers specifically to those families at the beginning of the year. And so we said, well, that doesn't really need to be in the overall elementary handbook. We do need to have the part in there where if you're bringing a snack for a birthday treat or whatever, it needs to be school or store purchase. It can't be homemade. So that remains, but we tightened up this section of school snacks. That was it.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Jerns? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the elementary handbook.
I move that we approve the elementary handbook.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Engel, seconded by Mr. Routh to approve the elementary handbook as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Site Logic joined us here a few days ago, or maybe longer, but Mr. Mayak would like to share with the board what we accomplished at that meeting.
Yeah, and Site Logic is the conversation started, I believe, last school year. If it was definitely before I came aboard. So let's say a winter, a spring conversation started, and Site Logic is, I'll use the words of a consultant of sorts. We would enter into an agreement with or make a commitment with. And their main purpose is really to guide and help us with long-term facility maintenance, recommendations, how we move forward with that. They have some other financial services and assistance that they can provide if it's levies and referendums and kind of the how-to steps. The document that you have with the Site Logic proposal, though, has a price tag to it. And just to be very clear that price tag is, for the lack of a better word, it's what they would charge just to come in and do that a la carte. If we enter this agreement with them, then and have this commitment, this long-term commitment with this organization or with this company, they are going to be our partners, and that fee really then is waived and really absorbed into the different projects that we do and the different avenues that we use for funding, and kind of gets rolled into what their objective and what their main purpose is. So there would not be that fee that you see on there that they get paid basically by working with us and being involved in is it even, if I'm saying this wrong, correct me, not really project managers, but they're involved in kind of the start to the finish, and we can eliminate some middlemen or steps along the way, and Site Logic would be taking care of that. So I was very clear with our rep, and one of Site Logic's big selling points, or their big push, is that their division is made up of former school personnel, superintendents mainly, and so they understand the education process, they understand the responsibility, the fiscal responsibility we have to our communities. And so I was very clear with Matt, who is a former superintendent, now our salesperson, that we just had a major project. We're not looking at anything real big right now. We know that we have little things that we're going to be doing along the way. They can guide us in that, but don't be looking for this big monster project because we're not there at this point. Can we still enter this agreement and you know, have this partnership? And he was very loud and clear that yes, that's what they're about, and they know how this system operates, the educational system operates, and they want to be there with us to help us through it. So with that, I would ask that the board approve entering into a partnership with Site Logic.
One thing, if I may add, as a Buildings and Grounds Committee member, the other two can speak on this also, but sitting through this, it kind of came to my attention, as Mr. Mayak said, we don't have any large plans sitting here targeting. But it is important that we as a district keep our facilities improved, and there are things throughout the district that were either not addressed from the last referendum, but in facilities the size of ours in two different buildings here, I'm a firm believer that there should be some of these things put on that 10 to 15 year plan. That plan should be revisited and managed, and we should be continually improving our facilities, not only adjusting to the educational needs, but just the wear and tear of these buildings, and to have that out on a schedule available for board members to view and administration, I think does carry a value. So I was impressed with that portion of their presentation of how they developed that.
Yeah, it was like Mr. Mayak said, it's nice to come in, and if there was a plan that was in place with this company, that whoever a superintendent would be, or when board members come and go, that plan is still there. And albeit, like Rick said, it gets tweaked and stuff from time to time, but it's a living document that, you know, people don't have to try to remember stuff. It's in there, and when we come and go, it's still there, and you can stay on plan. I liked that part.
I'm just confused though. What is the compensation? I mean, I hear the commitment fee is waived, but what do we owe them?
Again, if it's kind of the project manager type fees, if it's, you know, what we see now in the different fees and services that we pay off to, you know, this company or that company or this company, they would do those jobs, they would have those same sorts of fees. They talked about what a 2 to 5% decrease compared to what a different engineering firm or would be.
Specifically to a project, they're based off a percentage, based off of the size. But correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking from a 3 to 6% range
That's
on
what I was
that
trying
project.
to get to, is
I thought,
I just never heard a number.
right,
Yeah.
in that range, which is consistent. We've hired other consultants before on
Yeah.
projects, and
Sure.
that's kind of an industry standard in my recollection.
The way I understand
But-
it.
But we have a fixed price for what we're getting right now, correct? Travis, or did I interrupt
It
you?
doesn't cost anything, does it, unless we
It-
move forward? Yeah, there's a fixed,
Right.
Fixed initial cost
Yeah,
here
but
right
it's-
now, but it's minimal.
but I was kind of half, I wouldn't say offended, Joanne, but taken aback a little bit when you start talking about making plans and taking care of our facilities. I'm like, I made the comment to something like the paint isn't even dry yet, you know.
But we didn't do
But when you think about it, because that was a mistaken thought on my part, but when you think about it, it should really be reviewed annually, especially since we had all these evaluations done and then made some improvements. We really need to start over now with a list.
Well, and just sort of look at these big maintenance items or replacement items, you know, 20 years out, and planning
Well,
5,
they
10, 20
talk
years
about
out.
giving a schedule of life expectancy, I guess you could say.
Right.
So did they have any references that, are they doing this for other districts in
Yeah,
that area?
yes. Quite a few actually. They're very involved in Minnesota and probably the upper Midwest, this area, the region that we're part of. They talked about maybe 2 or 3 different school districts that they're involved with and they partner with.
Wasn't Hopkins one? Hopkins and
Hey, that's a good question.
I'm trying to think, I'm sure their website would answer those questions more accurately probably, but it seemed like there were, I thought probably a handful at least down our, but I can't give you a specific name, Lauren, to say that again, JW, okay, thank you.
So this is something that our superintendent and our facilities committee is recommending, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, I would call for a motion to approve the Site Logic IQ agreement as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Schoenrock to approve the Site Logic agreement as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a first reading of 4 different policies this evening. Mr. Mayak, please.
Yeah, and these truly are very brief and selected because of the minor changes that are being recommended. It's literally some, if I look here at the tobacco-free, that it's really adding some language that's dealing with vaping and just includes additional language on that. The old policy did not address specifically vaping. Student medication, it's a small section just on the administration of drugs, and it has some relevance to controlled substance versus an uncontrolled substance, and literally a paragraph of MSBA language that's added. So all 4 of them on the same lines, just very minor changes, language changes, and so with that, we'll go through our process of the first reading of those 4 policies.
And those you can expect to be coming back for the September board meeting to be approved. So if there are any questions on those policies, please reach out to Mr. Mayak and for further explanation on them, but expect those to come through for approval on the September board meeting. That moves us on, that's a no action item there, so that moves us on to the 2021 board self-evaluation. Mr. Mayak, if you could please.
Again, a requirement that you go through yearly, and looking at the goals that were set last year, to take a moment and evaluate and reflect upon the goals that you as a board set for yourself, and reporting that reflection back as step 1 of our goal making process for this coming school year. So you have the electronic version, we have some hard copies here. You can go through that, and I ask that you fill this out and send this back to us. I believe I have the date of August 30th. That gives us time to look through those and take that reflection and the evaluation and build upon some suggestions for board goals for the 21-22 school year, which would be part of our September meeting then. So again, if you need a hard copy, we have some hard copies. You have the electronic copy included as well.
Questions on that, board members? Good. All right, that brings us to the section here where we are going to ask to close the meeting for negotiation strategy. Do we have that paragraph? Yeah, I'll just read that off. This will be a motion to close the session to discuss labor negotiation strategy related to negotiations with the Education Minnesota NRHEG Teacher Bargaining Association and the principals as permitted by MS Section 13D.03. I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Is that motion by Mr. Mueller or Mr. Schmidt? Thank you. Motion made by Ms. I don't know which is worse. By Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Ms. Maloney to go into closed session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are in closed session. Thank you all for coming this evening. We appreciate your attendance. We move to the boardroom or?
So he lives, if you're going down the lake, your place, that gravel road. That kind of nice, almost European style house. You turn right by, what's the name of West?
Okay, if we could move to the boardroom, we'll have our closed session there.
From town going to your house, if you turn east on the lake road.